Hi there, how are you doing? This is another video in my Mind's Eye Theatre series of videos. So this is looking at the outer game rules, the outer character rules, which are invaluable to help you run a game which is safe for you and safe for your player. So I'm going to look at the different rules that White Wolf suggests, talk about the impact, maybe some things you hadn't thought about with it, and equip you to be able to provide the best lap experience for you and your players. Dead simple. Now, the danger of writing a video like this and creating a video like this, entitled When Laps Go Wrong, is it looking obviously at the negative sides of it. I'm going to confess now, 99.9% of laps follow these rules and will have no issues. When often you have those funny, crazy lap stories, it's because these rules won't followed. Simple as. So, strap in. I'm going to share some real examples that I've come across over the years and talk about just some ideas you might not have had about why those rules exist. First of all, I'd like to talk about session 0. So session 0 is something you do in tabletop, and it's to establish all your character links and stuff for your coterie before you hit the tabletop, but it also creates red lines that your players are happy discussing or not discussing in game, so you can all be comfortable and safe and secure that your boundaries are going to be respected at the tabletop. Lab doesn't have that. Well, it can have that. If you're lucky enough to be starting a game, then you can talk to players and establish those lines. What's probably going to happen is you're going to have to think out of game in advance what you want that to be, what you want that to look like, and be willing to listen to players when they bring your red lines to it, and if it's not going to compromise the game integrity, happy enough to throw it in. So if you're running a convention game, you would spend a bit of time before the game talking about the outer character rules and any red lines you've got. There's actually a really good lap documentary on YouTube which is done by Outstar, who is the White Wolf social media person. And she goes to the night in question, which I think is a lab, Giacomo lab or something like that, in Texas. Really interesting experience, but there's a really smart section where they're doing the outer character brief before the game starts. Now, I would have some sort of player's code which will cover the outer character rules, but also any red lines that you want to put on your game and your players. There might be certain topics or subjects that you don't want to discuss. There might be certain archetypes or character backgrounds that you don't think is appropriate for players to have in game. If so, now is your time to get that in a document, let players know. It's no good saying after the fact, okay, maybe that shouldn't have happened, if you haven't discussed it in advance. You also don't want, if you've got a long running chronicle, you don't want different kind of rules and discussions from years ago being forgot about, half remembered, coming back in. Just have it in writing, have your players agree to that, and I would actually, like I say, get that signed off, get every player who plays at my game to sign off that they've read and they understand that there are some rules that they must be followed and obeyed. Means it's you're protected as a storyteller, they're protected as players. Just as an example of that, I now have 2 rules which I always throw in every game that I run. First one is I don't run any plot lines involving minors. Not those fellas that work underground hewing out coal. Anybody under the age of 12, 16, anybody under the age of 16, I wouldn't write a plot or involve a plot or have any characters doing any backgroundy stuff with that. The other thing I do is any adult stuff stops at the bedroom door. That's as far as I'm going to run or involve myself as a storyteller. You might blue book it with a person, but that's certainly not for public consumption. Probably is out with the boundaries of the lap. You'll see, chat about that later. So let's talk about the rules themselves. First one, no touching, no stunts. 2 threads to this, no touching. First one is everybody's got different boundaries. So often a game will look at this as in terms of no non-consensual touching. So it's really natural to shake hands. Well, coming out of COVID times, that might be a thing that people just stop doing. It's really natural to shake hands. If I put my hand out to shake and somebody else holds my hand to shake, there's nothing wrong with that in my opinions. That's about as far as that goes. Some players out of character enjoy giving hugs. Some players out of character enjoy receiving hugs. But actually, again, that could be a consensual thing. But like, don't assume that everybody wants a hug or gives a hug or receives a hug. Respect that boundary. Make sure that exists. And by talking about it, means that people are aware that other people might have boundaries. Some people exist in life oblivious to the boundaries of others, and that's not out of malice, that's just the way they are. So by reinforcing this, that these boundaries exist, that's okay. It also stops any accusations that, well, my character was doing it, it wasn't me, and something's happened which involved touching that shouldn't have happened, and they're trying to use an in-game reason to cover out of character bad behaviour. Wandering hand syndrome. Fortunately, I've not had to deal with as a storyteller. No stunts, so this could involve running, jumping, leaping, pre-programmed stunts, but it's also linked to the no touching. So an example of a game in Carlisle, there was a room where Prince Primogen were meeting, and the person on the door was told nobody gets through this door. So at first they barricaded the door, which in itself was a health and safety hazard, or if there's a fire, you've just barricaded some people into a room. It's not a great look. But when some players further challenged that, this player, who's a big lad, picked somebody up and manhandled them against the door. Not against the door, against the wall near the door. That suddenly changed the lap. Everybody went silent. They'd gone too far. The player who was pinned against the wall was shaken. It knocked everything off kilter, and that player then became very reticent about turning up and going to laps again. And they were friends. They were friends before, they were friends after. They'd role played, did loads of tabletop together, but that was something that crossed the boundary that actually put the player off coming back to the games, understandably so. Second one, no weapons. Now, a couple of strands to this as well. You might live in a place where there's heavily strict restrictions on weapons, for example the UK, or there's less restrictions on weapons, i.e. in America. So if you're running around with some replica guns being all blade, pam, 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 and in the UK you might have somebody see that, misunderstand that, and call the police, in which case you can get the armed response unit coming out to you. I'm fairly sure this occurred in Bradford. The urban legend certainly going around the UK LARPing scene is the Bradford game. Might have been Daughters of Twilight had that occur, and police response unit called out, never a good sign. Now the other worry is in America, if you've got people running around with guns, other people with guns, be that law enforcement, be that good guy with a gun, be gangs, whoever might have guns, might misinterpret a situation and get involved to kind of with real weaponry. And yeah, if someone's got a real gun and you've got a pretend gun, I know who's winning and which side I wouldn't want to be on. So yeah, no weapons props. The other side to that is the physical intimidation of the weapons. We are a make-believe game, and actually people might have quite an emotional reaction to having a gun pulled in their face. And this might come from kind of feel like the traditional sword and sorcery lap. You want your kit to look realistic and you're going to get involved and you're going to fight it, and you might want to bring that costume into your vampire games. But the Mind's Eye Theatre experience and what I'd call the field LARP experience are two different experiences. And what you need to understand is people who do one might not do the other for various reasons, and the physicality of it might be something that puts somebody off a LARP game. Now I might be playing an elder vampire who would never be terrified by a wee neonate with a gun, but actually if you pull a realistic gun in my face in a kind of a the right environment, that might trigger me in kind of all sorts of ways I don't understand. I've also seen a guy with his replica gun pulled out in front of a female player's face giving orders, who was physically excited by the fact that he had a gun pulled in somebody's face. Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. That was the situation. No drinking or drugs. So we're creating a game where we want very firm outer character and in character boundaries. The one thing that's going to mess up that is if your brain has been altered by drinking or drugs, so you struggle to understand that. If you're going to break any of the other rules, you're probably going to do it because you're impaired through drinking or drugs. Now I'm going to hold my hands up here. I'm not perfect. I have crossed the line with drink at a game once, and I've learned my lesson from it. Often because we're playing in pubs, it's the alcohol's there, and you kind of want to reciprocate the landlord who might be giving you the pub function room for free. And to help my out and personal kind of anxieties, Dutch courage is more of a better word, and get my ability to perform for people, with people, I'd always have a drink before a game. Most UK LARP games set in a pub don't mind you having one or two drinks. And in my youth, when I was learning what my limits and tolerances were, there was a game where I was storytelling, I had drunk too much, my assistant storyteller, domain coordinator, took me out of the game. It's the right thing to do, and I thank them for that now. Didn't thank them at the time, but if it can happen to the best of us, it can happen to the worst of us as well. So it's not good for you, it's not good for the game around you. It's only a game, so I've just said about those clear in-character, out-character levels. It works both ways, so you don't want the outer character affecting in-character and in-character affecting outer character above and beyond what would normally happen in the game. One of the things I advocate for is setting time at the end of your game so you can chill out. You could chat to people about perhaps tense scenes, or if you thought somebody's character was a dick to you, you can go and say, actually, can I talk about that? Was that, it felt a bit personal to me, and you can relieve that tension rather than finishing at 11 o'clock, jumping in the car and just bad mouthing whatever scene or stuff that you might have misrepresented. It's a shared game, it's commonality, so let's go at it that let's assume that everybody's friends, and we'll take it from there. It's only a game. Player safety will always trump story. So if something goes wrong in game and a player's physically unwell or mentally unwell or needs a call out, it should be a very quick and easy way to time out that game, stop that game, pause that game, get everybody on an even keel, or remove the issue out of the game so it can be best dealt with if you're going to continue the game. And that there should never be a, if the game's got to end, the game's got to end, and all the players have got to understand timeout means timeout. It's not a dating game. When I was doing most of my LARPing, I was early 20s, and sadly I've seen relationships impact the game through favoritism, favours, bad breakups, impropriety. Yeah, you cannot have outer character relationships resulting in in-game favoritism, and vice versa, in-game favoritism resulting in outer character favoritism. Do know in Camarilla UK, certainly when I was a national storyteller, nobody approached me. I feel quite no, I don't feel quite aggrieved at all. I was going to joke, I feel quite aggrieved at this, but I do know that certain high-level storytellers were approached and offered favours for kind of playing special characters and stuff. I know some storytellers have been approached with money to play a special character and get special approvals and stuff. That's never good. Everything should be open, above board, consistent. Anybody who thinks it's okay to approach a storyteller, you probably don't want in your game. Add in the extra thing at conventions and stuff you might have, sleeping arrangements and stuff, adding a further dimension to it. All I'm going to say is ultimately though, you're adults, act like adults and behave like adults. With that as well, every game should have an age limit, and that age limit should be strictly defined. Everybody at your game should be whatever your culture, whatever your government decides is an adult. So I wouldn't have anybody under the age of 18 in the UK playing at one of my games. It just makes everybody safe. I said in another video, it's better to plan and have a plan in place that prevents problems than have to deal with problems as they arise. Be mindful of others is our last one. Now again, there's something about being mindful about your other players, the people you're playing the game with. However, be mindful about the people outside around the game that aren't involved in the game. So that could be bar staff at a venue, could be other customers at a venue. If you're outdoors, it could be dog walkers or people that stumble across your game. How are you going to deal with it? What you're going to do, and make sure that players aren't people, the public, and get a misunderstanding about what you're doing. There's a funny story in Carlisle where the venue was being used as Vampire one week and an S&M sort of meet and greet the other weeks before they went off and did their things. So one of the local punters had got his weeks mixed up and thought he'd try his luck with the S&M crowd and kind of got himself into the game and was a bit confused with that. But luckily that was all handled professionally and smoothly. But those are the crazy things that could happen. And you don't want to lose your venue because the venue owner doesn't know what's going on and somebody gets freaked out. And yeah, just be clear and open and have defined lines. Be mindful of what's going on. So anyway, those are the out of character considerations. Talk a bit about them, talk a bit about where I've seen them go wrong. Like I say, it kind of talking about those stories paints LARP in a bit of a bad light, but 99.999% of stuff, it's fine, but it's better to be aware of what could happen, so if it does happen, you're able to respond appropriately and quickly than have it kind of fester or cause a bigger problem. But in this day and age, I certainly would have a player's conduct printed off and signed that every player signs and has a copy of, and I would always revisit these out of character rules just so your game runs as smoothly as possible. But anyway, on to more fun topics in the future, and I look forward to chatting to you. That's goodbye for now. Bye bye.